In recent years in particular, I think the assault has come from several different directions. There's a political and an ideological strain of the assault, obviously, that we've seen in the increasing aggressiveness, prominence and aggressiveness of organized political attacks on the autonomy of the professoriate. We've seen them embodied in stuff like the Academic Bill of Rights and whatever else. I'm blacking on his name. David Horowitz has it going at the moment, and the attempt to sort of mobilize trustees and alumni against faculty, and this bizarre claim that administrators are duped or held hostage by radical faculty, is just part of that absurdity. So there's that, right? There's a more or less direct attack on the autonomy of the professoriate that comes from mobilized right-wing interests that have been the same since the early 1970s. They've been very clear about what they don't like about the American university and colleges and what they think they ought to be. There are the less self-consciously political, or there is a less self-consciously political strain of attack on higher ed that I see that's consistent with the hegemonic premises of neoliberalism, right? That sees the university as an enterprise, and one that should function as an enterprise on exactly the same basis as a theme park or Staples, which just comes to mind because I'm the sort of geek who hangs out in Staples. And I think these are the greatest challenges that face us. And I think that why the AAUP is especially important as a vehicle for confronting these challenges. Well, first is the obvious and the historical one. It's been the AAUP that has been that has taken responsibility since its founding for establishing and maintaining and being a watchdog on standards for faculty academic freedom, which we understand is well, for academic freedom and pursuit of the inquiry and teaching and learning in the university, which I think we understand. The professoriate is the crucial linchpin in establishing and maintaining. We're the ones who do the work, after all. And another reason that's particular to the moment that we're in is that I think we need to see the attacks on the university within the framework of larger trends within within American society, and especially of an ideological sort. I think a parallel here is to what's happened to the public sector. What the ideological hegemony of neoliberalism, and I know this sounds a little like buzzwords, so I want to try to avoid those, but what that means in concrete terms, among other things, is the implantation of a sort of common sense understanding that, among other features, views public institutions, public life as, in some ways, inefficient, inauthentic, and counterproductive, and tends to reduce all human life and activity to the calculus of the market. I've been saying for some time, in part within the context of our call for free public higher education, that the human capital defense, or that the defense of higher education and access to higher education on grounds of enhancing human capital is counterproductive. That's no longer our argument. That's an argument that's increasingly the property of the University of Phoenix and Control Data Institute and these other entities which offer people career training with a college degree. And they say, I watch their commercials and their other advertising, and it's quite affecting, right? That they can offer people careers or a career training and certification with the equivalent, or with the functional equivalent of a bachelor's degree that will provide them access to a respectable life without having to sit through a poetry class, right? And you know, I mean, that's appealing to people. But I think that by virtue, or that in the same breath, or for that same reason, it's all the more important for us to try to build, to engage in the equivalent of a public education campaign over a long haul, to discuss, to consider, to lay before the public a more expansive understanding of what higher education is and can be, and why it's important to all of us to protect it. And it's not just a matter of large abstractions like, or I mean, even abstractions like the sort of argument that basic research is necessary for applied research to have space, to have space to develop. It's a much simpler proposition, actually, that people should be able to explore and to expand their capacities in whatever ways that they want. We found in the work that we've done with trade unions and trade unions outside the academic sector that this is an argument, apart from the stereotypes that a lot of people may hold about the American working class. This is an argument that connects with ordinary Americans' interest, with ordinary people's interests around the world. Actually, that's part of what makes our species, I firmly believe. And where I'm going with this is that within this framework of common sense, right? I mean, just as everyone understands that the government can't do anything decent for you, it's also the case that because of decades of concerted right-wing propaganda now, people believe that professors are airheads or ethereal in the clouds. Most of what goes on in the universities is frivolous, this, that, and the other. You don't need anything, other than a business school, basically. For us to be able to maintain what we believe on deep principle, what drew most of us into this profession, the vast majority of us into this profession, to be the essential virtues of higher education, for us to be able to protect that is going to, at this point, require building a broader base of support for higher education on the terms on which we understand it outside the university. Just as public sector workers have come in general to understand, or at least in California, I can't say in a whole lot of other places, that the only way to hold on to the privileges that any of us, or the benefits that any of us has, is to join with others to protect them for the society as a whole, right? And I think the AAUP, because partly because of its the breadth of the composition of its membership, and the fact that it's anchored in the faculty and in graduate students who are likely to be faculty themselves at some point, that we're the best placed to do it. And because we aren't simply a trade union, we are the ideal site from which to launch the sort of campaigns that I think are going to be necessary ultimately. Popular campaigns that creating popular frameworks for discussion, I mean, at the community level, about what higher education is, what's good about it, why it's important to have academic freedom for faculty in the process, and so forth and so on. If we don't do it, I don't see who can. And if it doesn't happen, I've been saying this for some time now, I don't think there's going to be what most of us now would want to recognize as a university around in 20 or 30 years.